Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Chiseled. And why do we call it Chiseled? Because we're all work in progress. Hello, I'm Rob Commodari. I'm also the author of Better Than You Think and the host of this podcast, obviously. I'm also a co-author with several collaborators on the book, Next Level Your Life with Kyle Wilson. So today, I have a special guest, Randy Wilson from Greenwood, Indiana. Randy is a successful husband, father, entrepreneur, podcaster, and author. He's the host of the Rich Mind podcast, which we're going to be talking a lot about today, where he helps his listeners discover that the path to true personal freedom is through financial education and personal development. He's the co-author of the #1 best-selling book, Think Big, and his passion is helping others live the life of their dreams by helping them take 100% responsibility for their money and their mind. Welcome to the show, Randy. How you doing today?
Rob, super excited about this, man. We've talked back and forth a little bit. I actually had you as a guest on my podcast, and ever since we got this on the calendar, been looking forward to this moment. So yeah, this can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so we met at a Kyle Wilson event, his Inner Circle event down in Dallas, Texas, I think back in May. It was back in May, correct?
Yeah,
And,
that's exactly right.
and what's interesting about that, I've had several. By the time this podcast airs, people have heard several other Inner Circle members on the podcast. But it was a special group of people. I mean, we met, and within seconds, it was like there was a connection. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree. Yeah, Kyle has a way of bringing together a group of folks that are like-minded, driven, but the personal development piece, right? His connection is with Jim Rohn, being Jim Rohn's 25-year business partner. And that's where I was attracted to Kyle, right? Just through that connection with Jim Rohn. And I think that's where a lot of us have our core philosophies kind of centered in that personal development realm. And so if that resonates with you, you kind of get drawn to those groups, right? And that's kind of where we've met. We've met a lot of other friends as well. And it's a lot of fun to collaborate, to get to know, to learn from, right? Just like your name, the Chiseled, right? We're all a work in progress. And so
Yes,
to
we
do
are.
that, yeah. So to do that with other individuals that are also a work in progress it's fun. It's a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah, I think it's understanding that we're all like built from the same block, if you will, and same cloth. But it's interesting. So yeah, I didn't mention that Randy, he's a father of 3, and he's been married for 27 years, and I too celebrated 27 years of marriage. So that marriage itself is a work in progress. Wouldn't you agree?
100%, 100%. Yeah, the 27 years, we talk about it often, but the phases, right? You go through phases. You go through that initial phase where you're just working, grinding. We were in our 20s, right? Not necessarily have a clue what was going on, what we were doing, trying to raise 3 kids in there as well. You kind of get through that initial phase of the learning, and then you get into the grind of the kids being active, right? Doing all the stuff, all the activities. And now we're empty nesters. And so now we're trying to figure out the third phase of trying to figure out what life is like, without kids and without things necessarily pulling on our time as much as they were, let's say the last decade or so. So we're super excited about that. So yeah, 27 years. Stacy, my wife, and I, we've had our ups, we've had our downs, but we've hung together all the way through and look forward to crossing the finish line together for sure.
Good stuff. Because I hope that finish line doesn't take. I hope it takes a while from now anyway.
Yeah, you and me both. I mean, that's definitely the plan, right? That's the intention.
So, well, cool. Well, Randy, look, so what I'd like to get into is I'd like you to give us a little backstory as to how you got to where you are, the Rich Mind podcast, the book, and, I guess a little bit of, again, the background of Randy Wilson.
Yeah. So, dig in as far as I'll give you kind of the maybe the 30,000 foot level of the story, and we can obviously dive deeper if you'd like. But the biggest thing is, as you mentioned, I'm from Indiana. And if anybody is familiar with Indiana, the Hoosiers, were just basketball, right? So the basketball is kind of what we're known for. The IU days, Bobby Knight, you name it. So I was in that time frame. I graduated in the early 90s, before the internet, before all the different things that we, even having this conversation today. But my ultimate goal in my middle school going into high school phase was I wanted to play professional basketball. I didn't know how, and I didn't necessarily even care where, like overseas. You know what I mean? I was just had this dream of playing basketball at a level where I would be paid for to do that. As I mentioned, we were surrounded. Even the movie Hoosiers, right, was about Indiana basketball back in the day. So that was the dream and that was the passion. So I was working really hard. I didn't quite meet up to the level of physically, right? I made it to 6 foot at best, and that's probably stretching it a little bit, but I never quite got there physically. And so throughout that entire process, my dad was pretty tough on me. He wasn't physically abusive, but he was pretty emotionally abusive. He was pretty tough on me, meaning I shared with him obviously what my goals were, and he was making sure, at least to the best of his ability, that he was going to make sure that I got there as well. To the point where when I got to be about my senior year, I realized that I wasn't going to make it. Meaning I could just tell I wasn't even going to make it to the next level to college, let alone getting paid to play. And baseball was kind of along that as well. Uh, and so when I got to that point in my life, it was kind of a pivot journey or a point in my journey that I just realized that what I all the work and all the effort, so you can imagine, I was just working all the time in the driveway, open gyms, wherever there was a pickup game I was playing, and I just didn't quite have it. To the point where when I got to that point in my senior year, I was ready to forget it all. I was so frustrated with my father, with my situation, with I wasn't very good in school. Like I've left that part out. I was a C student at best, and that was only because that's what it was required to stay on the team. I just didn't do real well. So I didn't really have a next plan, like, the normal go to school, get the degree, get the stuff, where my friends were doing. I was kind of left out in the cold. So fast forward a little bit, the only thing I could think of was to join the military. So I actually was in the process of communication with a recruiter for the Marines, and I had a verbal commitment actually to join the Marines. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, my guidance counselor back then had me go ahead and apply to a couple of colleges just to see what happened. They didn't necessarily think anything was going to happen either, but lo and behold, the local school uh, in Muncie, Indiana, which is where I was growing up, Ball State University, they actually they let me in. Rob, I mean, somebody made a mistake at the front office. That's been my story the whole entire time. I have no idea how it happened, but I was just like, wow. I mean, so what do I do, right? Do I go to the military? Which I wasn't doing it because I wanted to. It was almost like I just thought that was going to be the next step. And so I retracted that verbal commitment and decided I was going to go to school, even though, as I mentioned, I wasn't necessarily the greatest in class. Uh, Fast forward a little bit further, met my wife in college, which was the best thing that ever came out of that decision to go to school. We quickly met, fell in love, dropped out of class or dropped out of school relatively soon after that. And then we just started the world called grinding and hustling. And so up into my 30s, so this was obviously my early 20s through college, that part of my life. So into my early 30s, about 10 years into marriage, I was a retail store manager for a local grocery chain here in Indiana. And once again, so I don't have a problem with hard work. So in hours and putting in the time and doing whatever it takes to get to the next level. And that's exactly what I'd done with this retail store chain to the point where I'd gotten myself up to be a store manager at early 30s in my life. And that was a pretty good accomplishment at that point in my life. But this was right around 2007, 2008, which is, we're kind of suffering, I think, from similar situations here in 2023. But I didn't know what was going on. I mean, I was blind to the economy. I was blind to things that were going on in outside of my little four walls of my little store. And they actually come in and they closed my store, like blindsided me. I had no idea that. So they showed up on a Wednesday morning. I'll never forget. My supervisor walked in, which was odd because he never came in that early in the morning. Asked me, said, "Mr. Wilson, we need to talk." "Oh, okay, sir. Yeah. What do we need to do?" He says, "Let's go to your office." And so we went and sat down, and he said, basically the company's not doing very well, and we've decided that we're going to shut this location down. And I was just like, "What?" I mean, I literally put my heart, blood, sweat, and tears into operating this business. So it's its own little business, right? It's doing its own little, and I was in charge from front to back, meaning I was in charge from all the inventory to all the people to everything. And I was working all the time. Anybody who has ever worked retail or anything knows about retail. Yeah, it's literally 24/7. But anyway, so they blindsided me to the point where I began to question everything. So as I mentioned, my early years of school, I got to the point where I started to question why was I, I mean, all the everything that I thought was real was becoming unraveled. And that kind of happened after high school. Everything that I thought was real in the work environment, go to work, work hard, 20 years, 30 years, and then you get this retirement and you sail off into the sunset. That's what I was fed growing up, and that's what I
Right.
was working towards. I realized really quickly that that wasn't true. So then I started to take responsibility for myself. And the only thing I could think of to do, Rob, was to go to the local library. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew that I needed to do something. I needed to take back control. My life was what I thought was in my control, but it really was not. To the point I went to the local library and I didn't know where to go. So I went to the personal finance section of the library because that's so money, right? I thought I just needed to get money. That's kind of what the only thought that I had. I didn't even know what that even really meant. Uh, and so the book, the Retire Young, Retire Rich book, off just jumped off the shelf at me uh, at the local library to the point where I grabbed it immediately because that even that title just spoke to exactly where I was at in my life. Went home and I started devouring it, and I started learning concepts like income statements and balance sheets and good debt and bad debt and businesses and all the things that we probably take for granted, and a lot of the listeners today might take for granted. But in my 30s, I had never even heard those concepts before. Nobody in my family uh, ever spoke like that to me. I didn't even know what any of it was. And so I just went down a rabbit trail of self education. That's why I'm an advocate. And that's why I talk about all the time about self education. I was introduced into personal development through that same book. He talked about Earl Nightingale's Lead the Field in that
So,
book.
hey, Brandon, if I can interrupt you real quick, so that you
You
said
may.
he and you said the book, it was Robert Kiyosaki's book,
Robert
correct?
Kiyosaki's book, yeah, the Retire Young, Retire Rich book. Even the personal development world was never even on my radar. I didn't even know it even existed until I read that book. And the Lead the Field program he mentioned it in that book. And I decided as I was reading that book that as things became into my awareness, I was just going to start going down the rabbit trail and learn. As I said more than once now, I wasn't a great student, and I'm still not a great, IQ type student. I'm not a reader and take a test and pass it. That's not me. But when I get like focused on learning something, I can go deep and I can go deep fast. Uh, and so, yeah, I turned my car in the mobile classroom. I just started reading as many books as I possibly could. So I'm 100% self-taught. Anything I've ever accomplished is been really because of my own effort, and I'm just trying to share it with as many people as I possibly can, which, so fast forward again up until today, I've had a little bit of success. I've raised a good family. We're trying to obviously figure out different investments and different ideas, but I'm just at the point now where I feel like I can start giving back and sharing with a guy or a gal that might be in the same phase that I was, that are ready to learn, but don't even realize that there's even a potentially that they don't even know it even exists, because that's how it was
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So it's interesting because I'm listening to you, and I remember back in 1990, I walk into an office one day, and there's a book on somebody's desk, and I had never gotten into the personal growth and development, world. And I asked the guy if I could read it. I read it, and here we go. 30 some years later, 1,000 books later, I've read all these books, and so it was a book. It was a book that triggered this for you, and I think, and you said you're 100% self taught. Now I get that, right? Because they didn't have this stuff in schools growing up, the whole
Mhm.
personal growth and development. So it's like you're self-taught, but you're taught by all these mentors in these books, right? And
100%.
one book, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, really, 100%. I was just agreeing with what you were saying. Yeah, that's how it's
Yeah,
been.
yeah. So one book led to the next, to the next, to the next, and I'm sensing, you correct me if I'm wrong, you got on that roll with reading financial books. Is that right?
So, yes, what drew me in was the Kiyosaki's, right? So you can go down the Retire Rich, Retire Young, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the Cash Flow Quadrant. I mean, there's so much content just in those 3 to 4 to 5 books, right? I didn't name them all, but yeah, there's just so many that you could be consumed for a while. If you're not exposed to any of it, like if you're just getting started, if you could just dive into that. So then you start learning the real estate piece with Kenny McElroy's books, right? Which is also part of that Rich Dad, Poor Dad ecosystem. There's just so much that you can get basic information to then start changing that mindset of what life really is, right? What money is, what assets really are, good debt, bad debt. As I mentioned, some of the things that we probably take for granted that, in our basic conversations today, just because we deal with them so much and so differently.
Yeah, so you seem like a very humble guy, And you said I've had a little bit of success. How do you define how does Randy define success?
I define success today that I am in 100% control of my time. I don't have to answer to anyone. So I do what I want to do when I want to do it and within reason at any time I want to do it. And that's kind of how I've set my life up to be. I don't necessarily have all the fancy stuff that you might see on on the internet, right? The social medias and that kind of thing. But I've designed my life that at this point in my life, I can literally do just about anything. I can survive for a very long time with what I've built up to this point, and I consider that successful. As I mentioned, I might not have the balance sheet that some folks have, but my balance sheet is hefty enough, like I said, to support the lifestyle that my wife and I have chosen, and to the point now where I'm trying to figure out what that next phase is. As we probably all know, things are shifting, things are changing, right? So I'm trying to figure out where that next thing is going to go be, and I'm gonna just try to get in front of it with as many people as I possibly can.
Yeah, and that it's something you said is very important. You said, yeah, we are living the lifestyle that we chose to live, and it's a choice, and it's all relative to what you want. And I think so many people see the, let's call it the flash and dash of other people, and like, I want that, I want that, I want that, and that's me, and then you go chasing it, and it's a shallow chase, if you will. But to know just the idea that you know the lifestyle you guys want to live. And I'm reading this book right now, Fix This Next by Michael Michalowicz, and he talks about lifestyle congruence, right? So knowing what you want, the lifestyle you want to live, and are you earning the money in your business that meets that, there or and some, if you will. So it's interesting that I think it's a humble thing to say that, hey, we've chosen to live this lifestyle. We've chosen to go this route, and that's where we're going. And then along the way, it's like, okay, what else is going to open up for us? It's like this awareness piece. It'll come your way.
Yeah, 100%. So it's seasons, right? Jim Rohn, I've mentioned him a couple times. He talks about life is like the seasons. And I feel like I'm just in a season of just I've grinded a lot, as I've mentioned in my past, right? And I don't have a problem with grinding, but at the same time, I'm tired of grinding just for the sake of grinding, if that makes any sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
I want to do it with a purpose. I want to do it for a reason that is beyond a couple of dollars or a couple of assets that I may or may not need or want, right? I want to do things that I want to do, and I want to do it with people that I want to do it with, right? So that's where I launched the podcast. I've started to get associations with people, having interviews just like this, right? Getting to know people, just starting to stack resources. And it doesn't have to be money, right? It can be different personalities, different networks. It can be so many different things. And so that's kind of the phase I'm in right now is I'm trying to focus on the accumulation of assets, but it's not necessarily business assets at this point, and just getting ready for that next phase of grinding. And I know it's coming, and I've got plenty left in me. I'm not 50 yet. I'm almost 50, so I've got plenty of life left. I just want to be ready when it's time, right? I've missed out on a few things that I think that if I would have been paying attention and aware, I could have really benefited from. Let's just put it that way. And so I'm just ready to go when it's time. But until then, I'm good with just being me, just showing
Yeah.
up, working hard, but on the things that I want to work hard on.
Well, the most important thing you can do is be you, right? That's the most important thing. So that's good to hear. So it's like you said that you're not 50 yet. So I like to say 50 is the halftime, right? I live in halves, right? And so like I'm 56, and I'm 6 minutes into the third quarter, right?
I love it.
Or second half, if you will. So that's good. So that's good. So, but the thing you said, it's like you missed out on a couple things, and I'm like, we think that way, but maybe Randy, the student, wasn't ready for that yet, right?
So 100%. So it was probably more of a confidence issue for myself. As I've mentioned, I'm self-taught. So I'm a little bit gun shy out the gate, if that makes any sense. I get caught in the analysis paralysis, I would say, more so than most or more so than some. And when I do that, obviously I'm a little bit slow to the trigger, but I make sure that I'm okay as well, right? So I've never set my family back. And so that's the ultimate goal. I don't want to necessarily take a huge leap backwards for the sacrifice of a huge leap forwards, right? I'm just more of cautious, I guess. And so, yeah, I was around when the dot-com thing was going on back in 2000. I can vividly remember looking into stocks and trying to figure that out. And so then even with this real estate run this last time, I participated in a little bit, but I was not anywhere near what I could have done. Now looking back, when money's been free for the last 15 years, I should have been borrowing and, you know what I mean, shoulda, woulda, coulda, right?
Right.
But hindsight, but I want to be ready this coming time, which is why I'm getting myself mentally, physically, right, ready to go when it's time. And so I'll be ready for sure. I know I will be.
There you go. Just the knowing of it's the win, right? That's part of the win. So
Yeah,
talk to me
100%.
about this, the Rich Mind podcast. I self-explanatory to me, but explain what it is. And I like to know the idea. When did you say, oh, I'm going to do this podcast? How did that evolve?
It's been an idea of mine for, I would probably say, at least a couple of years. The name and the title came from basically the incorporation of the two, the personal development and the financial education. So the financial education is the rich part, right? But then the mind, I think that if people, I think the two go hand in hand. I don't think you can have one without the, I think you can have one without the other, but I don't think you can necessarily be successful ultimately without both, right? So that's where the idea between the financial education and the personal development piece, I think go hand in hand. And so that's what I love to talk about. I
It's
enjoy
like
talking about business and all
yeah,
those
so it's
types of
like
things, but
when nitro meets glycerin, right? Nitroglycerin. It's the
yeah,
rich and the mind come together, right?
that's the whole idea. And so I try to bring folks from a diverse background, including myself, right? I'll get on there every now and then, do a solo episode, give some of my ideas and some concepts, some things that I've learned. I would say it's a little bit more uh, basic. It's not necessarily because I'm not going to get on there and talk about owning 5,000 doors and this, that, and the other. I can have conversations about it because I understand how that works. But we're talking basic things, right? Assets, liabilities. We're talking personal development, right? So right now we're going through a friend of ours or with a friend of ours, Chad Kenneller. He and I are kind of going through once a week right now and dropping a lot of personal development concepts and ideas and philosophies, and we're just kind of going back and forth. And I just love the interaction. And then hopefully, you know, if somebody's listening that is kind of in that phase of life, just like I was 15-ish years ago, then yeah, if I can impact somebody like that, that would be a huge, huge win for me moving forward. And so that's where I'm having fun doing the process, right? So it started a couple of years ago. I decided at the first of this year, so this is 2023, that it was time to pull the trigger, make it happen. So I ran the name by a few people. They gave me the thumbs up. They liked it. And so yeah, I kind of ran with it. And by April 1st, the first episodes were launched, and we're actually, I don't know when this is going to go live, but my 100th episode is going to happen a week from tomorrow. So a week from Friday. So I'm super excited about that. I don't exactly know what date that is, or I could timestamp that, but yeah, we're ready to cross over the 100 episodes. So I'm super excited about that too.
Yeah, I think that's November the 3rd. November 3rd
Yeah,
is it?
I was gonna say I could
Yeah,
look
yeah.
at a calendar. I don't have one handy, but yeah, I
Yeah,
know
well,
it. Yeah, it's
this
coming
one will
up.
get released after that, so people are going to be
Okay.
looking in hindsight on that. So it's all good. So you
But
said
100
something about
episodes, I'm super excited about it.
so you're doing the episodes once a week, I guess. I'm taking
3 a week.
three. That's right, because I'm saying you just started in April. That's banging them out. Good for you, man. That's great.
Yeah. So I took a little bit of a pause. I would say in July, I kind of backed it down to 1. So I'm trying to obviously I want to make it the best content that I possibly can, right? So I came out the gate hard, and I was a lot of episodes, and I was just trying to figure out how and what I wanted it to be, right? As I mentioned, I want it to be enjoyable. I don't want it to be work. And there for a little bit, it was starting to feel like work. It's like, I just need to dial this back a little bit. So I did. I pulled it back to 1 episode a week there for maybe the month of July. And then, yeah, then I ramped back up to doing 3 a week. And yeah, quickly got to 100 here and super excited to see where it goes from there. I keep telling my wife, just don't let me stop, right? Because I don't want to stop. If it literally becomes like a chore, I'll consider it, but I'm still having fun doing it. So yeah, I'll keep going until I get tired of doing it.
So you said you enjoy. What's the enjoyment of the podcast? What is it that you enjoy?
I love conversations just like this, Rob. I mean, and I get
Yeah.
to do it, yeah, multiple times a week. I'm a creative, I'm an artistic person. As I've gone through my journey, as I mentioned, I'm not necessarily great in school, but what I have learned is I'm an auditory learner. So I can listen and comprehend things like there's no tomorrow. 2 times speed, I could probably listen to something 3 times speed, and I could, you know what I mean? My brain can just pick up on it.
Uh huh.
But I'm a visual guy, meaning I love the art. So any artwork that you see comes from me. I honestly do my edits. I go ahead and do my own editing. Um, I just enjoy it. It's a creative outlet for me. So as I've mentioned, I'm doing things that I want to do. So I spend my time creating my podcast, and I'm having a good time doing it.
That's great, man. And so you said something else about Chad Cannell, who I interviewed on this podcast as well. Did I hear it? Well, the way I heard it, the interpretation I had is there's a little bit of accountability with you too. Is that right?
So when I was in this July-ish timeframe, I was trying to think of how do I wanted to pivot. I wanted to change the way I was doing the podcast. And so the word that came into my awareness was collaboration. Someone threw the word collaboration into my awareness, and I'm thinking, okay, who can I collaborate with? Who else out there has an expert knowledge, an excessive amount of knowledge that would be willing to come on and share with me in a collaboration format, just like this, right? A conversation, but it's about a specific topic. It's not an interview style. It's a conversation. And so Chad was someone that came to my mind because I've been exposed to the fact that he is like, I feel like I'm a good student, personal development. That guy is like at another level. He's like, yeah, it's
Steroids.
oh my gosh, it's a lot of it's I learn from him every time we have a conversation. But anyways, to kind of answer your question, so I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this kind of collaboration episode. If you'd be willing to come on and shoot, 20 to 30-minute episodes, we'll pick a personal development topic. We'll bounce it off of each other back and forth, give our 2 cents, and call to close." And that became we're probably on episode 12, 15, something like that of doing that. You know what I mean? Of
So you is that a separate podcast too?
No, it's just part of my podcast. Yeah.
So
So I
you,
just
that's
made it.
great. That is great.
Yeah.
So I like the reason I brought that up. I just want people to hear. I think you use the word collaboration, right? Some people use the word mastermind, right? You two are masterminding, collaborating, and I want people to I guess find the value in that and understand that there's great value in whether it's one people, two people, three people. It doesn't matter. Like I've been part of a mastermind group. It's three of us for like this is our 12th year. And people are like, well, what do you do? Right? Well, you collaborate. And you may be thinking something, but not say it. And Chad may say something. You'd be like, I was thinking that. It's more like it could be like an affirmation or a confirmation of something that you believe, or maybe you need a push or he needs a push. And I just think there's tremendous value when you have somebody else that you can confide in, you can collaborate with, and kudos to you guys for doing that. I'm excited to see where that goes, and I'm gonna have to give Chad a call and check
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've had him on the show before. And if you haven't, I would definitely try to get him back on again. But Chad is
Yeah,
a wealth of knowledge in the personal development space. And he's had success on his own as well. And he's a military background and he's just a lot of fun to talk with. So yeah, he's great.
so you've said this a few times, and I use it. I just say the words too: self taught, personal development, personal growth. Do you feel that there's a higher power behind any of this?
Yes. Meaning I know that so it's like this collaboration idea. That was I think of it kind of in an awareness type thing, right? So I'm always trying. So that's even kind of the pivot that I'm in right now. I'm waiting for something to kind of come into my awareness that says, "Go do this," or "Go check this out," or "Go." Right? Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yeah, it makes total
So
sense.
yeah, so I might not put it in the words or context that you might be trying to get me to say or anything, but at the same time, it's
There's no manipulation here.
yeah. So that's where I told you even before we hit record, right? So if I'm not as clear as I as I need to be or want to be, just stop me and ask a different question. But at the same time, yeah. So I look at it as awareness, right? So I'm always trying to be aware of my surroundings, how it makes me feel, my thoughts. So it's that personal development piece that I'm talking about, right? It's really getting clear, crystal clear, 100% responsible for my thoughts and my actions, my emotions. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it because I 100% am not, but it's a work in progress, right? Once again, the chiseled, we're a work in
Absolutely.
progress. So, but I work at it. I actively work at it. I think a lot of folks are on autopilot, right? And they're just kind of drifting. And I see that even in my own family, right? You just see drifting. And I just try to I try to get in the driver's seat. And so I don't, I used to get in a hurry. I used to get anxious, waiting to go do. And as I've realized that it's not necessarily the doing that gets anything done, it's about taking not just any action, but the right action and really harnessing in on whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing at that given time. As I mentioned, that right now I'm just kind of in a phase of just waiting to see what needs to be done. I literally ask myself, So here's an internal thought that I ask myself all the time. It's like I keep saying, repeating to myself, what needs done? I just keep saying that to myself, and I haven't gotten an answer yet, to be honest with you, Rob. I just keep asking, what needs done? And I just know that at some point, whether it's a person, place, thing, thought, I don't know, circumstance, I don't know what it is, but when it approaches, I'm gonna be ready, if that makes any sense. And so I'm patient enough to know at this age in my life where I'm at in my phase with my family, right? I don't necessarily have the responsibilities that a young family would have, that I can be patient, and I'm going to be as patient as needed and just keep enjoying doing things like this, right? This is a lot of fun. So hopefully that
So
answered your question.
yeah, and it is what it is, right? It's your answer. That's no right or wrong answer, like you said earlier. So it's like, so what, like you said, you're just going to enjoy what's going on right now. So it's like I see you as a guy that's living in the moment. Is it that an accurate statement?
I try to be present. So the word
Yeah.
present, I try to be present with you. So I'm trying to be 100% present with you. I try to be present with whoever I'm with at any given time. Once again, I'm not perfect, but I focus on doing that um, with anybody that I'm with. And that seems to serve me, meaning it allows me to not get distracted by things that may or may not be important at that time, but then I'm able to give it my best, right? Come across, as you said, authentically me. This is me. You're hearing me. This is me. This is how I am. And I don't need to fake it or be different to anybody. And if you like me, great. If you don't, then okay. But at the same time, I have to be happy with who I go, when I lay my head down
That's
with
exactly right.
what I'm trying to get accomplished every day.
You made me think of a song from the show, The Greatest Showman. This is me. You know what song I'm talking about? Yeah,
I believe, yeah, yeah, I believe
every now
so.
and then I play that song like this is me because I talk about identity, right? And people not living in their true identity, living in somebody else's what other people perceive that they should be, or you wanting to be somebody else. And the fact that you can sit here and say this is me, you're living in your identity. Yeah, there's other things you want, there's other things you might desire, and other levels of growth you want to achieve. But right now, living in the moment, that I think to me that's the preparation of the foundational piece of the awareness that will, as you grow in this awareness, I think these bigger things will come because you'll be aware of them when they hit, and you'll be ready. The student will be ready.
I'll be ready. And that's the thing. As I get older, I get more confident, I will be ready. And that's the exciting piece. Uh, I still get anxious every now and then, thinking I need to go do more, but when I get that way, I'm better at calming myself back down. I control those thoughts, I control those emotions that might be going on in that at that moment, and then I'm able to just calm back down and get back to focusing on what I can control, and that is this moment at this time. It has nothing to do with the future. Can't control that. The past is in my imagination as well. Can't control that. But what I can control is right, hanging out with you right now, Rob, and the
Here we
people
go.
that are listening to us, and just trying to add as much value as I possibly can.
So, the question for you: you said something. I get a little anxious. There's a ton of people, and I bet everybody gets anxious to some degree, right? And you said I calm myself down. How does Randy calm himself down? Like, how would you encourage others if they're going through that anxiety or that stress? How does Randy calm himself down that might be able to help somebody else learn how to calm themselves down?
So I try to verbalize this, and so once again, if I don't do it well, just ask me to clarify. But one thing I call it triggers. I get triggered by an event or by a person or something, right? Something in my outside environment, outside of my control, triggers me. When I get that trigger, and I get them often. I get triggered often. I used to not be in control of those triggers, meaning it would happen, and I would instantly start going down a rabbit trail of why me, why this, I should do this. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, I
Blame,
know.
yeah, point the fingers, thinking that I'm not good enough, right? So the self doubt would kick in. So what has happened over the years? So a practice that I do, and I think you do as well, Rob, is I journal every single morning.
Awesome.
And that's a great exercise for me to get those thoughts out of my head. I'll be honest with you. I had a triggering moment yesterday, but I'm I'm better at catching it when it happens. So it's like I don't eliminate the trigger, but I can when it happens, it's like I recognize it. I'm aware that it happened. And when it does and my mind starts racing, that's where I start questioning the race, right? It's like, is that true? Is that not true? And then a lot of times if it carries over, so like into this morning's journaling session, I'm writing that out. Where did that come from? Why did it happen? Is that true? And
What
so
story
doing
are
that
you
exercise,
telling yourself?
yeah, why did that even happen? A lot of times
Yeah.
it's self-doubt for me. I just start thinking once again that I should do more, be more, have more, when in reality, all I have or what I am is exactly where I'm supposed to be at this point, and I just need to be okay with that and keep working hard, right? As I mentioned, I'm not afraid of working hard and doing a lot of good things, but at the same time, I just need to be okay with what I've gained up to this point and not be anxious about a future that we don't know what's going to be. None of us know.
Nah.
So one thing somebody taught me, and this has been probably in the last couple of years, that's really been helpful. Maybe this will be helpful for your listeners as well, is that anxiety is nothing more than an overactive imagination of the future, of a future that it's your imagination because you're dreaming or you're thinking of something that's going to happen, but it obviously is not a literal fact. The exact same thing with depression. Depression is a overactive imagination towards your past. And so you're worried or you're upset about a past. And I've had depression as well. I mean, I've had ups, I've had downs, right? So I'm not this isn't a judgment on anybody. I've been there too. But it's your imagination. It's an overactive imagination towards the future and the past and not taking control of where you are right here in the present. Does that make sense? And so it's controlling your present, but it's your imagination. It's not real.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I start to question it. I literally to ask myself, is this true? Is this real? And what the answers I'm getting back is no, this isn't. This is all just fake, made up imagination things. People are busy. So it's like you reach out to somebody, for example, and they don't get back to you for a few days. And so you start to go, wow, why didn't that person do this? Or what's this? Or what's that? Maybe I didn't show up the way I should have. Maybe you see what I'm saying? And then
I know
those thoughts,
exactly where you're at.
okay. So I just wanted to give kind of an example. So that's an imagination going wild towards the future that that person might have been busy. That person, who knows? You don't know. And because of that, you're letting it control your present, which is also still going to impact that future. Anyways, it's a cycle. I'm not a
No,
psychologist
but
by
it's
any means,
great,
but those
right?
are the things I'm working on.
One of the things I give you kudos for is because like I was talking to a woman, I don't know, about a month ago about this stuff, and a lot of guys don't talk about this stuff. A lot of guys don't like to talk about the journaling piece, and digging into the triggers, like you mentioned earlier, because what you're doing is when that anxiety or that worry comes up, you're taking an introspective look inside. You're,
Mhm.
you're, you're looking for, you're digging for it, and I do that. And whether it's in thought, whether it's in writing, I think it's better when you put it down in writing. And I do a decent job. I could do a better job. And when you think it all out, then it can actually put, like you say, use the word calm, put your mind at ease, right? And you said anxiety is an overreaction. Say it again, an overreaction to
It's like an overstimulated it's your
imagination.
imagination. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're imagining a future that more times than not isn't going to happen anyways, right? So you're imagining a situation with a person, a place, or a thing, right? That you're putting anxiety towards something that
Doesn't need to be
isn't
there.
real, that doesn't need
Yeah,
to be there.
I saw this somewhere. It said, worry is interest paid on a debt not owed.
Mm,
Worry
I
is
love that.
interest paid on a debt not owed. We don't owe that debt, but we feel like we have to pay interest on something that's not even there. We feel like we have to have anxiety on something that's not even true. That's what happens. And so that's good. Hey, so Randy, before we wrap up here, a couple more minutes here, I want to talk a little bit about the book. So you got into the book, the Kyle Wilson's Think Big book, and that was released in 22, I believe, 2022, right?
Yeah, I believe summer of 2022, correct.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I mean I got it right here so everybody can see it. It's you can pick up it's the Think Big, and
Yeah.
Randy's one of seven, and I know several authors in here as well. And so you talk about the story of the book, pulling out the book, the Kiyosaki book, and then um, I think you talked about how your dad didn't know any better, right? I think if I got that correct, you had to self teach yourself. So what is being in this book done for you? I mean, you can sit here and say I'm a number one best selling author,
Yeah.
right?
So, you can always put on any bio or anything that you put out there that you're a number one best-selling author, right? Which is always super cool. right? It's always a good thing to say when people are asking about you and that kind of thing. But it was the process of writing the book, getting that story out on paper and into the world was a challenge and fun all at the same time. So working with Takara and the group and the team, that was a lot of fun to get that done.
Well, what was the biggest thing? What was the biggest thing you got out of it, or what was the biggest impact that had on you?
So to put that so that story of my father, so that's kind of where it all culminated at the very end of that story was that I realized is that the reason why I was mad at my dad for not teaching me, I thought he was holding it from me. So when I started to realize and discover these concepts in business and all of this stuff, once again, that we're probably taking for granted today, I didn't know. And so I thought that he was trying to keep it from me. And what I realized is that the reason why he wasn't sharing with me is because he didn't know. I
Right.
was sharing things with him and I was teaching him the income statements, balance sheets, business, the normal stuff. And so it became fun at the very end. Unfortunately, he's passed. He passed in 2016. But the point that of the story is that I'm self-taught and I was able to start giving back to my father what I thought that he was trying to keep from me. And so once again, that's where I'm so driven to try to give it to as many. I think that that's where if people just understood or knew these ideas, basic stuff. I'm not talking about owning a gazillion this and a million. That's not what I'm talking about. It's just basic personal financial education, taking responsibility for your own income, as I mentioned, for your own time, realizing that you don't need to turn it over in your time to a job or an employer, that there are benefits to owning your own business through tax, I mean, just basic things that I just love talking about and implementing into my own life because they've made a huge impact on me. And then I just try to share it with as many people as I possibly can. And that's where it just becomes a lot of fun for me.
So it's fun paying it forward, right?
It has been. So it's been a process. So that self-doubt, right? Should I, shouldn't I? Do I know enough? Do I know enough people? So when you start to go out into this world of sharing your thoughts and ideas with the world, basically on the internet, that self-doubt creeps in. And so, yeah, of course I had that as well. But at the same time, it was just like, if I'm not going to start now, when am I? And I
Yeah.
just hit play or hit record, right? Just hit record. If people show up, so a mentor of mine shared with me that if you knew or if you could show up in a room of say 10 people would show up and wanted to hear your message every single week, would you still show up? He looked at me and said that to me. I'm like, yeah. He said, well, then you need to do a podcast.
Do it.
And I'm like, of course. You know what I mean? So if those 10 people turn into 100, turn into 1,000, turn into whatever that number ends up being in the future, fantastic. But if I've impacted 1, 10, 5, whatever the number ends up being, then I've done what I needed to do at this joint or at this moment in my life, right? When I wait for this new epiphany pivot.
It's coming. It's coming, brother. Hey, so before I let you go here, how much more chiseling you think you got going on in your life?
Oh man, it's nonstop. So that's where when you start going down this rabbit trail of personal development, taking responsibility for who you are, how you show up, it's a nonstop journey, but it's a lot of fun because you start to realize that you're in more control over your own life than you really probably thought you were up till that moment. So the chiseled part, there's so many things I need to do, right? And it's a matter of just picking each one. So I do it in phases, right? I I get really focused in an area. So it's like I'm right now, I feel like I'm on a pivot towards my fitness, right? So I'm going to really start getting that dialed back in. I'm up and down. I mean, I'm not perfect at it, but I feel like that's kind of where a pivot that I'm headed to here real soon. So I'm going to start chiseling away on that when these new opportunities start presenting themselves in the future, right? Then I'm going to start chiseling away on those as well. And it's a never ending process, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's a lot of fun.
It is fun. There's nothing more I like than having an epiphany or an aha moment. I'm like, got it. I love it. I
Got
love
it.
that. Yeah. So that's awesome, man. Thank you for your time today, man. And thank you for sharing all this good information because, I just love how humble you are. I love how down to earth and genuine, authentic you are. I love that, man. And I think that's contagious. And you're somebody I want to know and get to know better. I think you're somebody other people like to know and have a relationship with as well. So that said, if when somebody wants to get a hold of Randy Wilson, how do they do that?
So the easiest thing to do is randywilsononline.com is my website. You can go there and get a digital download of the book that we've referenced here on the podcast, the Think Big book. I have a way for people to get access to the Think Big book. They can get access to that on my website, randywilsononline.com. And then also, you can email me, would be the easiest way. Randy@randywilsononline.com would be the easiest way to reach out to me directly. And you can follow me on the Rich Mind podcast. If you search Rich Mind in any podcast platform, I should show up on the Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, anywhere you can find podcasts. You should be able to find me. I'm also on YouTube as well. So if the video form is more your style, if you like to watch me have conversations, that's fine as well. You can find me on YouTube, just at Randy Wilson. If you search for that in YouTube, you'll find me there too.
That's awesome, man. You've been awesome to chat with today. I've enjoyed this conversation. I feel like I could keep going, but we're gonna call it a day right now. So, Randy, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for sharing all your wisdom and your journey here. And if somebody again wants to pick up that book, again, it's Think Big. And I think Randy's a big thinker. And he's got a lot of big things coming his way, so long as he keeps that open mind and keeps that rich mind going, as he says in his podcast. So thanks again, Randy. And until next time, everybody, let's go get chiseled.